This next test is sine wave distortion. It's actually done at 4 frequency points recommended by Tektronix, which should be, according to their manual, is the 1, 5, 25 and 100 megahertz, but the unit I have only goes up to 50 megahertz, so I've taken it back to a previous one, which is 100 kilohertz, 1 megahertz, 5, 25 and 50 megahertz. So this one I'm actually reading at this moment in time is 5 megahertz level, and the results for this should be better than minus 37 dBc. Obviously I'm reading dBm here. I can set this up to read the dBc. So it reads the dBc from the reference point, because the reference point is quite steady, it's quite clean waveform on this with no noise being picked up, so the dBc function will work on this. But again, you can see that I don't always pick up some of the readings that we've got there. And this one is working out for me. I'm getting somewhere around about the 60 dBc at 5 megahertz. So that one there is all fine. And what I'll just do is just change the settings and take it up to the 50 megahertz. So we'll stop him. Set the output to 50 megahertz. And we'll change this. See what that produces. So there's our 50 megahertz there. I've got some of them missing. Around about 150 megahertz and 250 megahertz aren't showing up on the plot. They're very low anyway. To get them, I just put some cursors there. So you see they're down at the minus 70s, so they're no real consequence. And again, this one's passes the spec. So that would be repeated for each of the 5 frequencies, and then ensure that each measurement, each of these peaks is below the minus 37 dBc. So back at the computer and the Tektronix verification manual, this is the setup for the harmonics distortion test. You can see the actual instrumentation is exactly the same as for the total harmonics distortion, and what changes is the frequencies that you test at, which is for my unit, the start frequency is down here, it says is 31052, so it would be 1 megahertz start off frequency, and then the setup is pretty much the same. And the only difference really is you're going to 7th fundamental as opposed to the 5th that stopped for the THD test. And these are the tables that give you the rest of the frequencies. So if I go to that 31052, you can see it should be 1, 5, 25 and 100. My unit won't go to 100, so what I did was roll it back to this one here, which is the AFG31052, which includes my 50 megahertz max setting, and an extra 100 kilohertz as well. So this is what I've tested it to, as opposed to the settings down here that exceed my unit specification. Onto the spreadsheet and the actual results of the measurements. You can see the measurement here, and then the dBc calculation underneath for each of the frequencies. And you can see whilst I've done it at the 100 kilohertz, it should be at a minus 60 dBc or better than minus 60 dBc. You can see the second harmonic doesn't quite make it. At 1 megahertz it does, and then at all the others it's fine. So it might not have been the best decision to take it back to that setting, but then I would have been limited to the 1 megahertz, 5 and 25 megahertz settings. So these other ones I've put in here is for direct comparison to the DG1022 that can't go above 20 megahertz. That's its limit. Scroll down, there's channel 2, and then you can see that the results are pretty much the same as for channel 1 really, so consistent across both the channels. And brief look, there's the DG channels there, similar sort of set of values. Again, that second harmonic seems to be quite high. Scroll up again. So in comparison here on the UTG, the second harmonic was quite high at both 100 kilohertz and 1 megahertz. So I don't know whether there is something around the actual physical setup of the test or the environment. Could well be as well. So MDO34, similar sort of results to the UTG unit in the 50s for the 100 kilohertz, 1 megahertz, and then dropping off after that. And then at 50 megahertz, and then goes back up to 54.